What's up, everybody? It's Hector Flores of the InsertName FC podcast, a member of the BellyUpSports Media Network. I just want to tell you guys right now that the segment that you're going to be watching is a preview for the African Cup of Nations. So just so you guys understand, the episode that we're dropping isn't going to be dropping for like another week. So our preview would be a little bit dated, not necessarily, but kind of. So because of that, while we're also trying to put more content here on BellyUpSports, it did help us be able to do the preview ahead of time without having people having to wait till next week for it to drop when some groups probably already be decided at that point. So it knocks out a few things for us. One, like I said, you guys get to see some content from InsertName FC. If you guys like what we talk about here, you can also check out the description below. It'll show you links on how you can check us out. Social media, podcasting, and of course, you can find our YouTube channel down there as well. The other thing is the African Cup of Nations is honestly an amazing tournament. It is fun. If you're a true soccer or football fan, it is at its purest form of the game. It's very enjoyable. So you guys go ahead and check it out. It's on BN Sports. So if you guys have that channel, please take full advantage. It's an amazing tournament. And also, we get to show off somebody, a great content creator, Moussa of Mo Football. Great content that the guy's been making and very knowledgeable of the game in Africa. So it was great to have him on. His information will also be available in the description, so you guys want to check him out as well. But yeah, so that's all I really got going. Hope you guys enjoy it. Make sure you guys go ahead and check us out. InsertName FC, new episodes every Friday. Well, except for this one, for this Friday. But we'll be back in action. We're currently kind of taking a break because of the holidays, but enjoy.
Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of BellyUpSports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at RighteousFelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon jerky.
All right, guys. African Cup of Nations. I have a special guest, host of Mo Football. You can find him on YouTube and GolzTV. He's a member of the Golz family. Moussa, it's happy to have you here, man. Happy to have you debuting here with InsertName FC, man. It's always great to bring other content creators like yourself onto here. But first question before we ask anything else is, why football?
Why football? Yes. I pretty much grew up in soccer. So originally, I was actually born in France. Okay. So born and raised, and I played soccer, and I also play academy soccer. So growing up, soccer was just it. And I also did another sport. Judo was also my second sport. So it was one of those things where, soccer is everywhere. That's what you play in the street with your friends. That's pretty much a way of life. So that's pretty much what football came about for me.
All right, that's awesome. And of course, you have your channel, Mo Football.
Yes.
Do you specifically cover any league specifically, or do you just talk all football that's going on?
So originally, I started with more of this MLS because St. Louis just got their new team. So that's what kind of got me going with the whole creating things for the team. And then I think I started with memes and GIFs for some reason. And then it just led to spending a lot more time creating content for the MLS team. And then it started to kind of look like, the off season started. So there was a lot less noise around soccer/football. But on the other side, there was still the Under-17 World Cup that was happening where people were not really talking about it. And then there was all the other leagues that were still going on, but there was not much to talk about. So that's what kind of led to me starting to covering other aspects of it. And then just starting to meet more people from other teams, other countries, leagues. And it just led to me going more of the STL related content to more of a broader one. So I watch maybe 20, 30 games a day if possible. So why not just share everything that I learned and help some of our US based friends do a little bit more about you know football outside of MLS or the small USL teams around the US.
No, yeah, I mean that's great, and I think that's like one of the best parts about like being able to work with other soccer content creators, just seeing like what's their motivation, their reason behind it. I mean, me, I'm just an idiot that just loves talking soccer, and apparently people like listening to me for some weird reason.
We
But
all are. We're no experts. That's what makes it fun.
yeah. So African Cup of Nations, I'm a big fan of this tournament. I think it's so underrated. It needs more coverage. It needs a better coverage. Fox, step your game up.
Yeah.
I know you can watch it in BN Sports. I know for a fact that it's on BN Sports, which
Yes.
that's also the other channel that I end up watching a lot of. But it's gonna be on BN Sports. The host is the Ivory Coast.
Yes.
Now is labeled the 2023 African Cup of Nations. Uh, but we're playing it in 2024. I honestly have no idea. I did a lot of research and I still can't find my answer. By any chance, do you know exactly why?
Yeah, I think it's more pre post COVID related because the tournament was supposed to happen the year before that. And I think it more has to do with budgets and marketing and maybe titles and names that were already printed.
Mm-hmm.
And I will expect that, the tournament is not as big as like the Euros, so they don't have billions of dollars to just scratch off and go on and start a new marketing process. So I'm pretty sure it's due to COVID and just not having the funds like at the tournaments. Like I think the Euros, you see countries that the country that wins the tournament probably would get what 20 million or $50 million to share for the winning team, and the winner of the AFCON, or for the French speaking ones, it's actually CAF that they call it. So it's CAF for the French speaking and AFCON for the US base.
Mm-hmm.
The winning team gets, I think they just upgraded it now to 4 million.
Wow.
So there's a huge difference on what the winning team gets compared to the other tournaments.
No, yeah, I totally that's a crazy thing to point out. I feel like CONCACAF's probably around the same realm. I mean, when there, you only have two real big countries. I know people like to talk about Canada every once in a while, but really just Mexico and USA. But yeah, I mean, for those teams, it may not seem like a lot, but if by a miracle El Salvador somehow wins, Gold Cup, that's a lot of money to them. So I mean,
Yes.
so I would imagine maybe while we might be looking at 4 million, like really that's all they're getting. I mean, for some of these African nations, I mean, that's an instant improvement for some of their facilities right there.
Yeah, especially for a country that probably those guys are not even pros or semi-pro.
Mm-hmm.
That's a life changing.
Yeah, so I think definitely need to find Fox. Step your game up, get some more money into this, man. Because I mean, like I said, AFCON. If you want to talk about football in its purest form, I think Africa. I mean, we got these teams in England and Italy and every all across Europe, that are grabbing players that are African, and you've heard the great names of African players from, Adebayo, dang, I'm drawing a blank. Drogba. I don't know how I drew a blank on that one.
Oh,
But
yes.
Drogba.
That's my goat. Yes.
Samuel Eto'o, like just legends of African players. And it's crazy to think that there's only one player that has ever won the Ballon d'Or that is African, and that is, of course, George Weah, son of Timothy Weah, who's my dog. But, before we talk about the African Cup of Nations, and this was something that me and Edward talked about last AFCON,
Right.
which was, specifically looking like at Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah, like,
Right.
man, if they can have a good AFCON and pile that onto their season, there's no, can you make a solid argument for them for the Ballon d'Or? Unfortunately, they did well in AFCON. They just didn't do well in the season.
Correct.
But when you look at least the players, might be some of the two names I just mentioned right now. But is there any other player, or maybe reiterate these two again, which is Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane, that if they're able to pull off a really solid performance in the African Cup of Nations and hopefully sprinkle it in on top of a good season currently with their teams,
Right.
is there a player right now that you could think of that could make a strong statement for the Ballon d'Or?
I will probably say Victor Osimhen from Napoli.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays for Nigeria. So he
Mm-hmm.
pretty much carried Napoli to win the Scudetto in
Mm-hmm.
Italy. And I think he's probably the closest striker to probably win it. It pretty much to all fairness, he's the last one that taken Napoli to win the Scudetto, and the last one was Maradona. So I will assume that if he goes into the AFCON and just score 10, 15 goals, and then Nigeria makes it to maybe semifinal, um, he will have it'll be kind of fair to say, hey, he earns at least the call out.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, for the history has shown that you know African players have not been the top five much.
Mm-hmm.
Mane, which was the closest. So it's one of those things where it's still a wish as much. He will
Yeah.
need to have at least like a perfect World Cup and then have CAF to follow that and then have a crazy season to actually probably dethrone someone.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows now these days? Ronaldo and Messi are no longer here. So now it's open for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. I would have loved it to see Sadio Mane. I mean, the guy has like one of the best stories, just in football in general. Just him being an overall good person. Probably still has
Yes.
the same. Probably still has that same broken cell phone. But
Hey,
like
he just built a stadium in his village. So
he did.
yes.
So I mean, I would love to root for him. Unfortunately, I think because he plays in the Saudi league, I'm sure the French riders are not going to be looking at him as heavily. But you mentioned Osimhen, which
Yes.
that great player, a fun player. Hopefully, somehow Real Madrid can get him.
No, Chelsea.
Oh well. um, but I mean, when you look at Mohamed Salah, I think he's having a pretty good season so far with Liverpool. I don't want to. This is like the boring pick, but I think obviously Egypt. I'm in AFCON. They're a powerhouse. I think they're the ones that want the most African Cup of Nations of all of CAF, and so I mean, I think if he can once I have another standout performance, maybe gets to win this year, this season.
Yeah.
I think Mohamed Salah could probably make a good argument. I mean, the way Liverpool's looking right now this year, it could be his best shot, especially where Messi's now in the MLS and
Right.
Ronaldo's in Saudi Arabia. So this might be Mohamed Salah's best bet, which is crazy because some people were writing him off when after how he performed last season, but yeah, so I mean, I'll go with the boring pick in Mohamed Salah. I don't think there's any way that Thomas Partey could make an argument, but
Nah. Nah.
no.
Nah.
But for you guys to understand, African Cup of Nations, it's 6 groups of 4.
Mhm.
The teams that advance to the knockout rounds is the group winners and the group runner-ups and the 4 best third place teams. So if you guys have never watched African Cup of Nations, it's very similar to Copa America. I just would say that this is maybe a little bit more of a larger scale than Copa America is, unless you add CONCACAF into it, which will be this summer.
Yeah, and they increased. They added more countries this time around too. So
Yeah, I did remember that because there's a lot more groups than last time, so I definitely
yes.
so makes things even more. I think it's great. I mean, we saw the Women's World Cup when they expanded, the competition got significantly better, where it wasn't just the U.S. Women's National Team. So I think when this opens up competition, opens up upsets. So
Yes.
I love it when they expanded as well. But all right, we're gonna look at the groups, Matt. So Group A, host nation Ivory Coast, Equatorial Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and Nigeria. And luckily Moussa's here, so he can verify if I'm saying these right or not.
You got them all right. Yes.
So when looking at Group A, um, is it wrong to not? Well, actually, with Nigeria in that group, I feel like Nigeria should be winning this group. But
Yes.
is the home field advantage important in African Cup of Nations?
I would say yes, extremely yes. But I think especially where Ivory Coast kind of missed a lot of their, we'll say, top players. So like almost anyone now these days, you couldn't really call out one of their top players.
Hmm.
Where before, you had Drogba, and then you were like, oh, he's gonna score 5, 6, 8 goals. They're covered. So I think it's probably likely that it's their home country that there's that extra push. But I see it more of a Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Guinea, and then Equatorial Guinea too on
Okay.
the table.
Yeah, I agree completely with you. I think Nigeria just overall always to me one best jerseys, but also just like overall just like one of the stronger teams. It's still crazy to me that they didn't make the World Cup, but obviously World Cup qualifiers for Africa is a little bit different than others. And
Oh yeah,
but yeah, Nigeria I think is a very strong team, and unfortunately Ivory Coast. The only name I can think of is Nicolas Pepe, and
yeah. You saw what happened to him.
yeah, we saw what happened to him. And who's that player from Barcelona? Kessie.
Yeah,
I haven't heard from him.
but I think it's probably more on the defensive side. So
Yeah,
they like one of their top scorer. I couldn't pull that out of my head,
yeah, yeah. So
unfortunately.
well, at least I can somehow see Pepe again, I guess. The guy who robbed Arsenal.
Eh,
It wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault. Someone paid for him. But Group B we have Cape Verde, Egypt, Ghana, and
Mozambique?
Mozambique.
Yes.
Oh, look at that! I'm not butchering names like I
Nailing
usually
it.
do. Okay, Egypt and Ghana here. I mean, what I mentioned it earlier. Egypt, one of the most successful teams in AFCON. Ghana, maybe not the same Ghana from years before. Yeah,
Correct.
definitely not the same Ghana. But is that the two teams to be looking at in this group?
I think on paper and based on history, yes, it should be pretty much Egypt and Ghana, and then Mozambique, and then Cape Verde. But Ghana's been playing so poor these days, and they got butchered by the US, which was quite surprising. So I think they're the one that I'm still questioning how well they will do. Um, but Mozambique's been playing pretty well these past couple of years. So it's almost like a toss between Ghana and Mozambique to make it to the second place.
Oh man, I mean that'd be awesome. I'm not awesome, but obviously Ghana to somehow choke out of this would be definitely, I think, bulletin board material for anyone. But yeah, you're right. Ghana, this team, this team used to be. I used to fear Ghana. I don't know
Yeah,
why I feared this team.
but they had some bad guys playing. Like Asamoah was one of those guys where was flying all over the field and butchered quite a lot of people. And those AU brothers also were I guess at their top, they were all over. So it's one of those things where Ghana was also had some of the best jerseys
Hmm.
and some of the most in shape guys. So if you were looking at their jerseys, they were like, very muscular, tall,
I mean,
six
you
two
have to when you're
guys.
wearing those Puma jerseys because
Yeah. So that's the one that kind of hurts a little bit, knowing that, one of those powerhouse is not doing as well, but it's the AFCON, so they might rise up because this is for Africa title.
So you said if it's not Ghana, it's going to be
Mozambique.
Mozambique.
Yes.
All right, so that I'm gonna definitely keep a close eye on that one then, because these are now the countries where I don't really know much of. But all right, so Egypt, I agree. Egypt should win this one. I'm gonna just not knowing much. I'm gonna say I think Ghana finishes in second, but it I do feel like this is the way they played against US, and that was a friendly.
Yes.
Um, and US has not been. It's not even like a good US team. They have not played well. That's just my bias for Greg Berhalter, but to
That's
do
a whole
that,
another discussion.
and perform like that, yeah, this could probably be a team that doesn't even get it, not even get that third place spot. So
Which will
Group B
be
is going to
bad.
be interesting. Group C: Cameroon, Gambia, Guinea, and Senegal. I know that there's a lot of eyes for you on this one because I know you're
Yes.
Senegalese.
Yeah.
Is Senegal? Is this their group? Is this their group to win?
It it has to. And I will say it's probably because we still have our generational wealth of in Senegal now that we pretty much have, top top striker. Well, I guess we'll say almost striker because Nicholas Jackson, Chelsea, he's still, even though Chelsea's not doing so well, he still has what 5, 6 goals, and he's still young and his first season. And then the midfield we have Papsar, and then we have Mane. So we have like strikers, midfielders, and then in defense we're all solid. And we also have Mendy in goal that won the Champions League with Chelsea. So it's like we almost have every single positions covered, and you're the defending champ. So the expectation is for them to get out the group up top, because they're pretty much has the hype behind them.
I'm assuming that their competitor is going to be Cameroon, even though we're
Yes.
talking about Andre Nana, who his confidence is probably right now not at the highest that it could be, but maybe coming back to Cameroon, maybe he finds that spark again of being the goalkeeper who I thought he was going to be before the way this season panned out for him. But can Cameroon compete? Whether maybe not for the top of the group, but finish in second.
I would say yes. I guess traditionally, they should. So yeah, I will definitely say there should be at least one or two, depending on how they feel. It's always the first game that will determine how well those teams do.
Mm-hmm.
So if Senegal gets to win their first game or second, they may field a weaker team, so that will kind of determine that part. But Senegal Cameroon that game will determine who's first and second, unless something go really bad.
Okay. So yeah, so Group C is going to be an interesting one. I'm
Yes.
with you though. I think Senegal has always been a fun team to watch for me. I always enjoyed their playing. I see more players that have that that have dual citizenships where it's French and Senegalese. That I see a lot more players go more towards Senegal. It's not very common. I know that it's not, but I do see more of these French players that do choose to play for Senegal. And I think that's definitely a big benefit for what Senegal has now.
Yeah, it's just based on the history since Senegal was a French colony.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you will see that a lot of players like myself do, where I was born in France with Senegalese parents. We do have dual nationalities too. And you'll see a lot of those players. To be fair with them, is that France right now it's stacked probably for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you're like the top, the top of the top, and they already sign you to the national team, you most likely won't make it to France. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these guys that you see have either played in France or play in the French academy. So they all relate to each other somehow. And Mane just went to Lens in France before he went to England. So there's always that connections that you will see for a lot of those French countries. Mm-hmm. Any African countries you see that speak French most likely have players who will dual nationality. And then you have to determine how close you are to that home country.
Yeah, I think one of those things is you always see that graphic of like the French players that could play for an African nation, and
all of them, almost
all of them. So it's a definitely interesting list.
Yes.
But Group D we have Algeria, a team that I know has had recent success in AFCON. I don't know if I feel like they're kind of dwindling right now though. That's just my opinion right now. Angola, which I believe is Portuguese influence, correct?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. I paid attention in history class.
There you go.
Burkina Faso and Mauritania.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
You nailed it.
Dang, it's like as if I do this professionally or something.
You got 4 groups perfect. So yes, keep going.
But all right, I'm gonna tell you. I'll be honest with you. Besides Algeria, that's the only thing I know from this group. Mm-hmm. When you look at this group, is there a team that just screams at you that this is the favorite? Because to me, I'm just gonna say Algeria because that's the only country I know.
Yeah. So I will say Algeria, yes. And I might be a little bit biased two for some of those guys because they're pretty much like the Senegal part where a lot of them are also dual national. So we do know some of them. Mahrez is probably the one that pops up the most because he was at Man City and he also played in my club team when I played in France and lived in France. So a lot of them do have also European style of play. But Algeria, I wouldn't sleep on them at all.
Okay.
For second place, that's where the toss up goes. Burkina Faso, they're youth players. So when they go to like U17 World Cups, they do extremely well. But then that's where their senior team kind of dwindled a little bit. But I definitely see Algeria, Angola, Burkina Faso, and then Mauritania for those four.
Okay. Burkina Faso is basically Honduras. That's because like their U17 team does very well, and then as soon as they move up to the senior team, apparently they forgot how to play. So.
Or else they do well, and then when the competition moves up, it's a different ball.
It's different when you have to play against a grown man. So
yes.
So that's very true. Group B, we have Namibia.
Yep.
Okay. South Africa and Tunisia. So I know of Tunisia, and I think they've actually gotten a lot better recently. So I would assume Tunisia is definitely a team to look at. I haven't seen South Africa since they hosted the World Cup, so I don't know how they're doing now. But when you look at Group E, what's the real competition in here?
I think that one will probably be when we always look for a group of death in World Tournament. This one will probably be it, because you have Tunisia, and then you have Mali, and then you have South Africa that are like the staple names. Okay. And if you look, for example, South Africa, their last friendly was against Morocco, and they beat Morocco. So they're like running on the high down because Morocco is the it country now because of their World Cup performance. Mm-hmm. And then Mali, their U17 team in the last U20 World Cup, they went all the way to the semifinal, and they're the one that scored the most goal in the whole tournament, and they only lost to France in penalties, and there was a red card in it too. So they're also running on the high, and a lot of those guys will be playing for Mali as well. So that one is the hard one to think of, but it's probably going to be Tunisia, South Africa, Mali, and then Libya.
Okay, so this is the group of death. Don't
quote me on that one. That's going to be a tough one.
So the group of death will be Group E. See, I'm liking this because I'm learning about South Africa, Tunisia, and Mali being staples in Africa. So I actually am really enjoying this. But yeah, Tunisia has been a name that I've seen a lot. So I'm definitely thinking Tunisia is going to win this one. And then Group F, we have I look at DR and I think of Dominican Republic. I know that's not what it is, but
we call it DR Congo. Yeah.
The Republic of Congo?
Yes.
So what's the D?
So now you because it's in French.
Oh, okay. So
I might have to do a quick Google on that one. It's Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oh, Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes. Okay. Morocco, Tanzania, and Zambia.
Yes.
Okay, Morocco. I'm assuming that this is the team that's going to have the target on their back. This is the team, like you mentioned earlier, made it to the semifinal of the World Cup. Was pretty close to making it to the final.
Yes.
So they have the biggest target on their backs. They have the names. Obviously Hakimi, a guy that plays as a fullback but can score a lot of goals as well for you. But this is the team that everyone's probably going to be deeming the favorite, I'm assuming, to win AFCON this year. So aside from Morocco, who is that team that's coming behind them?
So I haven't followed much of those other three, but based on history, um, Congo should be second, and then Zambia, then Tanzania. But this one is one of those dark horse group.
Hmm.
But pretty much the way they have it now listed on the groups, it's probably how it should be. But then that's the beauty of the tournament is that knowing now that you have Morocco on your list, they might step up their game a little bit to kind of show them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, pretty much the way they have it listed down, Morocco, Congo, Zambia, and Tanzania should be as it goes.
Okay, I agree with that one. Um, Obviously we mentioned the group of death is Group E with Mali, Nambia, South Africa, and Tunisia. But
Yes.
for you, what is that group that you're like, this is going to be the most entertainment value? That's the group that should be watched.
Ooh, I, that's a tricky one because the way they have it built, if you look at all of the groups, you'll see that all of the, well, we'll say the top teams, except Group E, the first pool and the second pool were like the big countries that are known. And then Group E is the only one that has South Africa in third. So it's kind of hard to say on that part. But probably Group A or Group C will probably be the most one that you want to watch because A has Ivory Coast and Nigeria, and then C has Senegal and Cameroon.
Yeah, I think I like the balance of Group A. Um, so I think that's for as far as entertainment value, I think that's where I would go to. I think with Group D is just learning about Angola, Burkina Faso, and Mauritania.
Yes.
Because I mean we know about Algeria, but I think also could be very entertaining because you're going to see three countries that you don't normally get to watch. And so I personally, for me, I think Group D would be my fun group, my entertaining group that there's gonna be a player that I'm gonna see and instantly gonna say, Real Madrid go buy him. So
It happens.
yeah, it does happen a
Yeah.
lot. So I agree with that. All right, every tournament always has that one dark horse team. You mentioned the last AFCON was Mali, who
Yeah.
was pretty close to winning the whole thing. Um, who is that dark horse team this season that could really ruin one of these heavy favorites' chances?
That's a good question. So I think yes. So I'm looking at their the schedule. I don't know. We'll say the dark horse. I'll probably give it to Maui. And the only reason is because that's the way I saw their U17 player this World Cup. And they were, I guess, so free flowing. And I think they were scoring 3 or 4 goals a game. So if some of those guys are moved up to the first team, they might make some noise. Because if they just beat Tunisia or South Africa, then everyone will be talking about them.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good one. I'm gonna go with Ghana. I know that it's normally viewed as a team that should be competing well in this
Right.
tournament. I think the bar is set very low on them right now. So I mean, at this point, why not be the spoiler of the tournament, if you will? So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think.
The bar might be low everywhere else except in Ghana.
Mhm.
I think for them, it's you got to win it.
So like a chip on the shoulder, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So the chip is on the shoulder for Ghana. So I mean, that to me is just dark horse right then and there. But there's got to be a favorite, right? So for you, I know you got Senegal. I know
Yes.
Senegal is your country. And hey, I wish I could say El Salvador could win the Gold Cup, but that's not happening. But
Yeah. You never know.
oh, I know. But so obviously, I know you have your love for Senegal, but um, are they your favorite, or is there another country that you feel is the real heavy favorite to win this?
I think I would say I have, we'll say three favorites. That are like almost the one that would make total sense, and then two that are possible that I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if they do. Of course, Senegal, and then there will be Nigeria and Morocco. Those should be like the ones that if they win it, we're like, okay, it makes sense. The second layer will be more of like the Egypt and who did I forget? And Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
Those will be the ones that I'm like, okay, that it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little down on Egypt because you can have Mohamed Salah, but he's just 1 out of 11. And if you put Hakimi against him, and you say, hey, Hakimi, you're now midfielders and you're a CDM, and you just cover Mohamed Salah for 90 minutes, then what happens?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm a little bit down on Egypt because there's 11 guys, and Africa can be very rough on top players. So they will make sure to silence him first.
Mm-hmm. No, I think with me, it's who has the best team, who's played together the longest, and I feel like that's usually what you have. That especially in AFCON, I feel like it's more of that's the real gem of it all to win this tournament, because Gold Cup you can have a whole. I mean, we've seen C teams win that thing with Mexico and USA. Um, you know, Copa America. It's just when is Messi going to choke? And I mean, recently it ain't looking like that's going to happen anytime
Nope.
soon for Argentina now. But it's always about, for me, when it comes to African Cup nations, is the best overall team. And I mean, when I look from top to bottom, to me it is Senegal. I know Morocco has that expectations from them, but I from what I've watched Morocco in this tournament, they don't look like the Morocco that I see in the World Cup. Don't know what happens there, but
Yeah.
when
And maybe it's one. Maybe still there's maybe a lot still on high of the World Cup because they got beat by South Africa.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's one of those things where you start to see countries that are maybe not used to doing so well in tournaments that the bar is then put so high that then the rest is kind of like, hey, if you don't do anything as good as you did, then that's where we're starting to see a little dip on
Mhm.
it.
So yeah, so for me, my favorite is Senegal. I think Senegal can honestly go back to back. I think it's actually really possible. I think they're in a, not saying it's an easy group, but definitely a winnable group for them.
Issue.
Um, I mean, at that point, it's just how the knockout round will look for them is the next question. But I think with Senegal is the mentality is there, uh, the coaching is there, the team is there. Like I always felt like whenever I watch Senegal, it's always been, to me, it's just the best well played team that I've seen from an African country, and that's one of the reasons why I have a lot of fun watching Senegal. So I'm definitely going to be rooting for Senegal to win this whole thing.
Great
Not
choice.
No bias by all means that we have a Senegalese supporter, a man that has Senegal. Are you a citizen of Senegal, or are you
Yes. So I
okay?
have one of those dual nationals, the fun part. That's the part where it hurts when, France plays Senegal, where um then you have to
Play
sit
against
in
your
the
next door
middle.
neighbor.
Yeah, I pretty much have to stay in the middle, or it's one of those you're happy because one team won, you're not happy than the others, and it's it's hard to be a dual national. Most people don't understand that.
I mean, I see. Like, you come from two countries that are good at the game.
Yeah, that might help.
I'm from the U.S. and El Salvador, so it's real
But
easy to pick which you I want to see win.
well, I think it's almost like um and I think there's so much of the big thing about those two countries is is this former colonized
Mhm.
country, and then some players decide to play for one country then the other. um it makes it fun, and both countries then makes it very fun too. Because if you're in France and you have, a city full of Senegalese and it's everyone's celebrating and then it's mad. So, and I think that's probably one of those nice things about the AFCON too, is that there's even though it's one country, there's always a tie to someone else in those other countries. So like Hakimi I'm a big one on him because he plays for PSG, which is where I grew up and played soccer at. So it's like, if Senegal does not do well, the whole continent goes for the country that's doing well. Just like Morocco and the whole continent of Africa was for Morocco when they were doing well.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree to that because I mean, especially for like our, the Latinos, we, when our teams get eliminated in any sort of tournament, we always root for the Latin team. Which for this World Cup, obviously, it was Argentina. Like the whole Latin, okay, maybe not all Latins, but definitely, good majority of Latins were rooting for Argentina. I'm sure it was also for Messi,
I
but
think most of it was for Messi.
definitely for Messi.
Yes.
But yeah, it was, so I definitely understand that feeling of just rooting for your country. I know for me, when I see a Central American player, Keylor Navas, the guy is one of the guys I love rooting for because he is Central American. He's, moving away from that stereotype that Central Americans cannot perform in the highest level. Man's a 3-time, Champions Cup winner, Champions League winner. So
I think he was probably one of the most underrated goalie, and he got shown way too much disrespect for what he accomplished.
Exactly, and that's always been that's been my soapbox for so many years now.
Oh no, he's one of my favorite goalies because he shouldn't be how he got treated in I think Real Madrid and then even PSG and all that. That I think he got shown a lot of it, especially for what he won and who he played with.
Oh, I agree 100%. But before we wrap this up, man,
yes,
tell the people why they should be watching the African Cup of Nations.
Why? So I will say, how I tell people is like when you watch the NFL in football, right? Where they're scoring a touchdown, their celebration is almost like subdue, or they're kind of don't really want to do much of that. In the AFCON, I can almost guarantee you every single goals that you will see, it will be a celebration, and the whole entire stadium will go nuts, and even the one that does the team that you scored against. And the other part is like there's sort of a kind of a pride when a lot of those African players play because now they know that it's their time to showcase that the continent has more to offer than what people kind of perceive it to. There's also that big argument to where you saw how it's in January, the AFCON. So there's certain teams, club teams, that will not release their players on time. Like Onana with Manchester United, you see how they had that agreement to say, hey, he can play this last game and then we'll let him go to your national team. You will almost never hear that for a European country for their Euros. So there's always that one pride where, they go back and play in front of, their people, we'll call it. And then it's put more eyes on the continent. And from what you can see now, they're building brand new stadiums all over the continent just for that specific reason to show that, African soccer, it's more than just those 5 or 6 players you hear from. So it's just the pride of it. Everyone's happy. You will see that it's more than just playing for themselves when it comes to those tournaments.
No, I 100% agree. It is definitely one of the celebrations is definitely very exciting. I think I have more fun seeing them celebrate than actually them playing. But it's like it's at its purest, and I think that's one of the things that I love so much about Africa. And honestly, they play the game beautifully. I think a lot of the influence of what people think of Joga Bonito comes from Africa. Like that is, this is the true originators of Joga Bonito is in Africa, and I think it needs to be showcased so much better. So I can't wait for this tournament. So
And and also they're playing more offensive. There's a lot less defense, and you will see that it's more free flowing than the whole tactical that you see often in club teams. These teams literally goes forward, and there's a lot more goals than World Cups. I think last CAF had more, if I believe, than the Euros. So
okay,
but yes, they score a lot of goals, and those smaller countries go crazy against. Like if you'll see like Angola and others, there's no hold bars. Those shin guards need to be strapped high because they're coming.
So to you Americans that complain that soccer is low scoring, that you probably want to watch African Cup of Nations because you'll see some goals. But Moussa, thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming in. Thank you to talk about African football because it's we here at InsertName FC is literally InsertName FC. We throw whatever the hell you want to put in front of it because that's really what we want to talk about.
I love that name. I think I tweeted you that, but yes, it.
So it was great to have you on. We'll definitely try to get you back on to talk about the knockout rounds when we get to that part. So if you obviously guys, this is going to be dropped actually after the African Cup of Nations starts. And that's just because me and Edward do not know how to look at calendars. So we're actually it's going to come in later, but you will see this interview available on BellyUpSports YouTube channel. So another place where we can showcase Moussa as well. But Moussa, thank you so much for coming on. And this is your time to go ahead and promote whatever you want to promote for your channel.
My pleasure. And so I will be streaming a lot of those games. Maybe a little early, but under my Mo Football podcast and also on YouTube. So everything is either Mo Football, STL, or Moussa Seka, which is my handle. So you can just Google that and I should be all over the place. So I will be doing a lot of MLS as well when the season starts. And I have a lot of interviews coming up, I think very soon. And one is probably you might be interested because they have a player from Florida, Santi Casalola, if I spelled his name right. He went straight from high school in Tampa, and now he plays in third division Germany as we speak.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yes, and I will be covering also the St. Louis Champions League. What it is pretty much the high school Champions League for all the local teams here. That's starting in September 30th. So I will be covering all of that from the draw all the way to the final. So I'll be all over the place.
All right, you're going to be a very busy man. If you are from the region of St. Louis, Missouri, go ahead and check them out, man. There's the content for you. Obviously, you can find them on GolzTV. You can find them on YouTube. Find him on Twitter. We'll definitely share his social media on our page when this episode drops. But thank you once again, Moussa. And we'll go ahead and go straight to me and Edward announcing our players of the week.
All right. Thanks for having me.